Hey folks, lots of news in this video, ton of stuff to cover that was revealed today in the Hearthstone dev team AMA over on Reddit. I wanted to take all those questions, boil them down into some quotes, so there will be a lot of text on screen, but you kind of just need to listen to me and you'll get the gist of it, including news about a standard format and like a classic rework. So the classic and basic set getting totally changed in the future, perhaps. The Battlepass monetization changes, Battleground stuff, arena, balance change possibilities. So not a lot of like firm, detailed news here, but a lot of things we hadn't heard about before and teases of some pretty big stuff coming in the future. So first up and foremost, I wanted to talk about the Battle Pass. This was leaked via a survey a couple days ago, but a lot of speculation and discussion online. I don't want to get into all the details. You can find some links out there for it, but essentially it's a proposed new monetization method for Hearthstone, both free and paid. And you'll kind of have experience where you unlock, rewards, legendaries, packs, and gold, as opposed to the normal gold earning mechanisms that exist in Hearthstone today, or maybe perhaps in combination with. We still don't have all the details. But given that some people were, really intimidated and scared by that news, like, what does this mean? Is this going to change the free-to-play ability of Hearthstone, or the, just reward system? Am I not going to be able to earn packs? Is it going to be harder, etc.? And Blizzard basically came in to try to quell some of those concerns, saying things like they want to maintain value that players earn, making rewards flexible as well. So essentially, right now, earning gold in Hearthstone's really about winning games very efficiently in standard, or perhaps if you're really good at arena, you can earn gold. But they want it to be flexible so that earning XP via a battle pass, you can get like the same amount of XP in Battlegrounds or arena or tavern brawl, or maybe even playing against friends, whatever it might be. We don't know the details, but they want it to be where you don't feel forced to play a certain way to earn rewards, which is cool, because like playing Battlegrounds right now, it does sometimes feel like you're not earning gold at the same rate you might be constructed. So it feels kind of iffy. If you're really concerned about economy to jump into Battlegrounds, this might fix those sort of problems. And I guess that also includes broadening the tavern pass that exists right now, which is just arena tokens, Battlegrounds perks, with adding some additional cosmetics to that. And it sounds like cosmetics are going to be all mixed into this. And we, again, don't know exactly what the final version is going to look like. Even the proposed version that's been leaked, we don't really know all the details or what all the things mean there, or the XP earning rate. So there's still a lot up in the air, but the gist of this, the takeaway was that Blizzard is promising at least to maintain the value that players earn. The biggest concern people were having is that grinders, people who play a ton of Hearthstone, would earn way less gold, and that casual players would either earn about the same or potentially more. So it might shift grinders as like free-to-play access down a lot, like you wouldn't be able to get as many packs. I'm still a little worried, so we'll have to wait and see the final version to know how much this delivers on the promise, but at least there's a promise here that it sounds like people will feel rewarded still for playing Hearthstone, and maybe even more rewarded, which would be awesome. I'd love, cheaper game that's more accessible to free-to-play players. Hearthstone feels very expensive sometimes. This could be a good change if the numbers are right, but let's wait and see the numbers. All right, so next up here, let's talk about the big changes coming to standard format sometime in the future. They are looking at the basic and classic set in its entirety, considering a rework like we saw in the past for something like Priest. Now, I don't know if that's as thorough of a rework as we got for Priest, where like a majority of cards are changed. Maybe that's not really a majority, but a lot of cards are changed. Or if that's just, picking and choosing here and there, maybe 3 or 4 classes. But in its entirety sure makes it sound like a lot. So we may have a totally different take on basic and classic in the future. Now, that's kind of scary, but also kind of awesome, depending on your perspective. I'm scared of that because I don't want to lose the iconography and the familiarity of cards that we have. Like, yeah, Millhouse sucks, but he's super fun, and Mimi, I don't want to lose that. Like, yeah, Cairn doesn't live up to the standards today, but I still have a lot of nostalgia. So finding a good balance between updating, improving, bringing them up to the level of Hearthstone today without losing the identity that we all know and love from our classic cards, that's going to be a tough challenge. So I'm really curious to see how this goes. But I do think the classic set needs a refresh. Like, Cairn is like less exciting than random common cards. He just is a death rattle, summon a minion. Like, what? That's not a legendary feeling card. And there's a ton of examples of that in Classic. So bringing a little new life to those could be pretty sweet. And then we also just got a little teaser that perhaps dual class cards aren't done. It didn't sound like they'd be particularly likely anytime soon, but they weren't written off. Typically, Blizzard shuts questions down like that a little more than they did here. So it sounds like dual class cards are possibly on the horizon, which I think dual class cards are pretty cool. So I would certainly be excited to see more. So one major thing there, one very tiny tease, but I mean, just knowing that Classic and Basic is potentially going to get completely reworked is mind-boggling. And it sounded like it was going to be a little while before we see that, perhaps at the next rotation. So not something expecting soon, perhaps, but still a crazy big change. All right, so now let's talk about balance and both kind of philosophical approaches to balance, but also current balance changes that are possible. Up first, it was teased that they are looking at some decks right now, primarily based on feel, so as opposed to perhaps performance or raw win rate. In other words, tweaking cards that feel bad, like Kael'thas was given as an example. I've also certainly cited that this week. Like, yeah, you know, Survival of the Fittest Druid's win rate is certainly okay. It's totally healthy, mid-tier 2 right now or something, but it feels terrible when they high roll you. It's just one of the most miserable experiences in Hearthstone to me. And it is important that games are fun. They have to be enjoyable. It's a video game. So even if something's not powerful or broken, if it's terrible to play against and it ruins the game from a fun standpoint for the people playing it, it needs to be addressed. I know you crafted it and you're sad and you will like playing it. I'm sad too. It's fun to have cool things. And it sucks that you might have spent dust on it. I wish there was just a blanket refund. But if they do change it, I do think it'll improve the quality of Hearthstone overall. So sometimes we have to take those hits to make the game healthier, to make sure everybody's having fun, so that we have a game to play. Otherwise, people get scared off and there's nobody left. Beyond that, we also saw a note here about cards rotating into wild and potentially reverting those nerfs. So like we saw with Dr. Boom Mad Genius in the past, he got nerfed to 9 mana. He goes back into wild, you pull him back to 7, because in wild format, he's totally fine at 7 mana. It sounds like that's something that they'll consider again in the future, and might even do a pass on previous missed cards as well and go back and revert some stuff. So just making sure things are still playable and lively in wild, even if they weren't particularly healthy in standard. And then finally, they also talked about buffs a little bit. Like we saw the cycle of buffs in the Rise of the Mech event, I believe it was, where tons of cards, I think 18 cards got buffed. We saw like Lunas get buffed too much. They said that if they do go back to buffs again, it probably won't be in the style of that event, but it'll be small corrections to get decks and archetypes up to the level they expect. Things like Libram Paladin recently getting buffed, right, to get it to where it needed to go. Now we're seeing the kind of downsides of that with Libram Paladin being a pretty strong, far and away tier 1 deck. But I think that'll self-correct itself, perhaps. That said, that's a good philosophy. I'm glad that they're willing to buff cards and not just nerf stuff. I think that's really cool, because without it, Libram would have been dead last expansion. It probably wouldn't be competitive this expansion, at least nearly as much. And that's a great thing to see. So happy to hear buffs are still certainly a possibility in the future. All right, next up here is Battlegrounds. Basically just a general teaser that balance changes are coming soon. I think we saw Eudora mentioned specifically as a potential problem hero. Beyond that, it wasn't really hard or easy to glean any additional changes, but pretty soon generally indicates pretty soon, and maybe they'll be bundled with some standard format changes as well. They are also planning an MMR reset at some stage in the future. They've had a plan in place. Apparently, it's going to have some kind of seasonal reset. I personally hope it has a floor, because I hate that I can't go into Battlegrounds and goof around without completely tanking my MMR on my primary server. So I end up going to EU and grinding like, we've now conceded to find a certain hero 30 games in a row, and suddenly your MMR is 2,000. And it's like, well, come on. So I hope they put in floors. Seasonal resets are fine too. I don't care. I would play a ton more Battlegrounds if we had ranked floors, so that I could goof off trying to get cool content, play new heroes, etc. Moving on, they also talked about token damage. In other words, when your whatever Death Rattle minion dies, your boat, your Tide Razor, I think it's called, It dies, it summons 3 tier 6 minions, and you deal 18 extra damage totally randomly instead of, it's summoning 3 1-drops and you're dealing 3 damage. It's the 16 or 15 damage delta, just completely based on RNG. And how ridiculous that is. They said specifically they're looking at Tideraiser, the name's right there, and Nat Pagle and his treasure chest, but not any other tokens, which I actually think is a mistake. I'd prefer to see all tokens addressed, because it's not just those 2 cards. They do create really big spikes, but there's a lot of other instances where you get crazy spikes as well. I mean, I think the classic example was Piloted Shredder summoning a Toxvin, which is a tier 4 minion. It's like, what? It's tier 4. It's higher than the minion that summoned it. That's crazy. You shouldn't be punished for killing things. So I wish all tokens dealt 1 damage, but I'm curious to see what this fix is, and certainly open to seeing how it performs and if it makes Battlegrounds feel better in that regard, because it feels really bad when your opponent gets a crazy summon board. And then also Murlocs are on the radar for balance changes, so that's probably going to tie into the top one there. Probably should have put those closer together. And actually, maybe a buff for Beasts, since they moved Goldrin to tier 6. Beasts fell off a little harder than expected, perhaps. And they're going to buff Beasts and probably nerf Murlocs. They did say they still wanted Murlocs to be a viable late game build, so I don't know what they're going to do exactly, but some kind of change to make Murlocs more reasonable so they don't just dominate every end game that they enter. All right, next up here is Arena, and this one's kind of sad. Really not much. They did show inquisitiveness about Arena, asking how they think they can make it better and such, but as far as actual updates are concerned, it really sounds like Arena's on the back burner. It's almost in a maintenance mode, maybe. I don't know that that's a term Blizzard would use, but that's kind of how it feels to me, where they're just keeping it running, just adding in new sets, but not really spending any time at all focusing on it, maybe just occasional balance tweaks or something if it goes crazy, but not trying to really iterate or improve it in any meaningful way, because instead they're focusing on new game modes, which we've been teased new game modes. I'd certainly rather people work on new game modes if I'm talking for my personal interests. Arena to me is near the bottom of my Hearthstone interests. It's a fun game mode, it's fine, but I would certainly rather see new stuff. So that's cool. I mean, maybe finding an extra dev here or there to work on Arena and create some cool things there would be fun, because there are still people who enjoy it, content creators who try to support it, and it gets harder and harder. But Battlegrounds already took Arena down a peg. Sounds like new game modes might take it even further down. So if you're an Arena lover, I don't think it looks like there's much on the horizon for you. I'm sorry to say. This is a pretty flat update, and not a good sign. So next up here, let's talk about some cosmetics. Basically, on the idea of bringing back old cosmetics, Hero Portraits card backs. Seems like they like this idea. They're going to keep doing this. So if you miss some gaps, you got chances to get them back. And then perhaps even more interesting, a new type of vanity card type. So we currently have like golden cards that can look different in both the collection, the hand, and on the board. So you're going to have a card that perhaps like shifts its, I don't know if it'll be the artwork or the name or the frame, but it's going to look different in every spot, which is cool. I mean, that's like, for a streamer, it's amazing, right? I get to show it off all the time. I'm a little concerned that your opponent won't ever, like for a normal person, because streamers are not normal, for a normal Hearthstone player, your opponent's never going to see it in your hand or in your collection. So I guess it's for you. That's fine if you enjoy it, but it's not something you get to show off. I do like cosmetics where you get to show it off. I mean, maybe if it's like super special on the board and super unique, you'd still get to show it off, I guess, and they'd know that it's the super special vanity card. But that sounds fun. I mean, I'm cool for cosmetics. I would vastly prefer the game be monetized via cosmetics than via packs. I know that's not an easy thing to do, and certainly not been Hearthstone's model, so I don't think we should expect that. But if we can use cosmetics like this and they help supplement the monetization, and that allows Blizzard to make the primary game mode of standard packs cheaper, then I'm all for it. That said, if this is in any way prohibitive from a monetization standpoint, or certainly from a power level standpoint, that's a really big problem. So again, we'll just see the details and comments on what it looks like then, but I'm excited for new stuff. So this looks like a pretty cool opportunity. And that said, that wraps it up for the AMA recap. I know not a lot of like firm news in this one, which, you know, it's tough to wait on things. I don't even know anything right now. You guys literally know as much as I do about Hearthstone, so I'm in the same spot as you. I don't know anything about the new game mode. I don't know anything about the classic and basic reset or rework or whatever it's called. So yeah, we're just gonna have to wait. I mean, it's cool to know things are coming. I think it's really important to have that horizon where you can look forward to stuff. And it sounds like there's a lot going on behind the scenes at Blizzard, and time will tell if all of that's good news or bad news. I think it looks like probably good news in most cases. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. That said, if you have thoughts on what they said here, certainly feel free to leave those in the comments below. I'll put a link to the full AMA in the description so you can go read all their words in entirety. There was a lot of stuff I didn't cover about, like design theory and lots of cool, interesting insights that aren't really news. So I would certainly encourage you to check it out, give it a read. I think you'll enjoy it. That said, thanks much as always for watching. Subscribe to channels that you enjoy. And until next time, game on.